Mute and share screen. All right, I'm back, and hopefully the other people will come back too. There come some people. Good. All right.
So I wasn't seeing any wording on my phone. All I saw was the four colors. There was no words there. I'm going like,
yeah, there won't be any words on your phone. The words are up here.
Okay.
On your phone, you just choose the matching color.
Oh, I was looking at the phone going, what the heck is this? There's nothing here.
Yes, it takes.
Okay.
It takes a little getting used to, but the students seem to like it.
Next time I'll do better.
yeah. Well, and I found I was real happy. I went to Cyber Patriot and they used this Kahoot, and I said, "That's great. I'm going to use that."
Okay, interesting.
I used to use some iClickers, which are similar, but this is much more fun for the students, and especially for online students. This is good. So I'm a real addict of Kahoot now. All right, we got 8 people, so I think we can move ahead. We're missing one person, but they may reappear. All right. So non-repudiation is another desirable security feature where people cannot lie about what they've done later. So, and especially if you're going to do financial transactions like a home loan, you have to get some cash and promise that they can impound your house if you don't pay it. And then when they come to take your house later, the bank wants to be sure you can't deny that you signed it. So digital signatures and audit logs make this possible. Least privilege means that users have just the minimum amount of authorization to do their job, not enough to get into trouble. And need to know is a horizontal control like a silo, so that even if someone is, say, privileged to be an administrator, they're only the administrator over the systems they need to be administrator over horizontally, not just every possible system, unless they really have a need for that. This happened to the U.S. intelligence community, and it was written in this book. In the 1990s, intelligence agencies built a lot of these silos and said you can only know what you need to know, so they did not share information with other agencies. These were their horizontal controls, and after 9/11, they said that if they had only shared data between all the agencies, they would have been able to put together the clues and predict it. So they took down all these information silos and started sharing data horizontally, and that led to Bradley Manning, who was a private who decided to expose data and was able to access a large amount of data because there were no horizontal controls when he didn't really have a need to know all that stuff. So you just can't win. You know, you just go from one risk to a different risk as you move your controls around. And it's very difficult to find the balance that really accomplishes your goals. So in general, you have subjects and objects. Subjects are active entities like users that are trying to access something, and the object is the passive entity they're trying to access. And then you have access controls that limit what objects are available to what subjects. So Internet Explorer, for example, can be either one. When it's running in memory, it's a subject accessing data, and when it's not running, it's stored on the disk as a file, and then it's an object that other processes and users might be attempting to access. This is very much like clients and servers, and modern computers are both clients and servers in different contexts. Anyway, defense in depth is another fundamental principle. You have a variety of barriers so that even if an attacker gets through one barrier, there are further barriers to limit how much harm they can do. So you might have a Palo Alto firewall protecting your whole network, but you also run a software firewall on each workstation so that if an attacker gets through the first layer, there's another layer of defense to limit how much harm they can do. Due care is the obligation of anybody that's protecting assets or people. You have to do what a prudent person would do. And that you may be accused of gross negligence if you don't, and you will have to say, I took reasonable precautions. Due diligence is the formalization of a management process to ensure that due care is happening. Gross negligence is when you don't practice due care. So if you are somebody like Equifax, and you have a bunch of private data, and then you lose it, then you are going to be hauled into court and before Congress and so on, and they're going to ask, did you really take reasonable precautions, or are you guilty of gross negligence? And this will have a bearing on what the consequences are. Abstraction is an important concept here. If you have a Windows domain, you could assign individual rights to each user, but that turns out to be very inefficient. It's much better to group people together and say we have administrators, we have sales, we have help desk, we have managers, and the managers all get these permissions. And then as an employee moves, you just move them from the sales group to the managers group to another group, and they get the permissions necessary to do their job. This is much more likely to be a maintainable system. Data hiding is another issue where you put data in storage compartments, another kind of abstraction, and then the whole compartment can be limited in access. All right. Encryption is, of course, the process of scrambling data so unauthorized people cannot understand it. They can see that there is data there, but they can't read it. All they see is scrambled text unless they are authorized, and then they are given the key and permitted to decrypt it. All right, I got another one of those cahoots. Let's see how it works. It would be here, 2A2. This is the one. All right. So, there it comes. Okay, 628-236. There comes Rachel. Good. I think we got up to at least 6 people last time and maybe more. I think a few people joined while it was going. All right, we got 5. There's 6. Good. I'll wait another 10 seconds to see if we're going to get more. All right, it looks like that's what we're going to get, so let's do it. 4 questions in this one. All right, why don't sales staff have administrative rights? That's good, because you're enforcing least privilege. Very good. Okay, why do you use a ladder instead of just climbing on the desks? All right, that's due care. You are obligated to do sensible precautions. All right, janitors leave slippery slope on the floor. What has happened here? Good. Gross negligence, the opposite of due care. All right, Joe is using a printer. What's the printer? It's an object. Good. Okay. Very nice. All right. Let's go back to the slides here. By the way, I can't see the winner, but if I go here, I can see the winner there. So Jim is the winner. All right. Good. Anyway, so, all right. So here are some governance principles. These are the practices that will direct the security efforts of your organization. And the goal here is to keep your business flowing. And sometimes you don't get to choose your security principles, but they're forced upon you by either the government or by industry guidelines or even license requirements for the products you're paying for. Anyway, if you have some kind of principles that you have to employ in your organization, and you have to prove that you have obeyed those rules. So this is a business issue, and you have to have auditors providing compliance reports proving that you have done various things. For example, if you're handling medical data, then you're subject to HIPAA, and you have to provide compliance reports to prove that you really are properly encrypting the data and shredding the paper you throw away with medical data on it and things like that. So you've got your security planning based on a business case, and then you've got various parts of this: strategy, goals, mission, and objectives. Generally, the way it is done that works best is a top-down approach, where upper management has to agree that you need security, and then they define in very broad general terms what security is required. One thing that tends to happen and fail, and it says is a big issue in the CISSP training, is the bottom-up approach. It is quite common that a company is not very secure, and some IT person or developer will get upset about this and start complaining that you aren't doing good security practices, you're not using the right kind of encryption, and so on. And they will get very angry and try to create security without support from management. And the CISSP training frequently tells you, never do this. You're wasting your time. If you can't get upper management to buy into your security program, you will fail, and you're just wasting your time. You can't do it from the bottom, because it takes resources and commitment. You have to first get a champion in upper management, or your security plan will never get anywhere. So the CSO, if you have one, would be the person responsible for this, and that would be an upper management person, and they are now able to implement security plans, and they have the authority to allocate resources. So you can spend money and buy hardware and pay for time and staff, and if you don't have that kind of push, nothing much is ever going to get done. So you have a strategic plan, which might go for 5 years, which is your long-range goals. Then you have tactical plans, quarter by quarter or year by year, of your short-term goals. And then you have little operational plans at the bottom of individual things, like putting in a new firewall or changing the password policy or something like that. So that's the game here. And the strategic plan typically is where the risk assessment happens, where you evaluate major changes like upgrading to the next version or moving from PCs to Macs or something. So it's going to take years to do it. And before you do something like that, you make a careful plan to decide whether that's really going to be financially justified. And then you got tactical plans to accomplish smaller things, and operational plans for really short-term things. All right, you hire some people to do one project. Once you've got your infrastructure in place, you don't let people just change it casually anymore. If someone wants to change something, they have to justify the change and get authorization first. And they also have to have a rollback plan. So if you're planning to do something like upgrade to the next version of a database software, you have to figure out how long that's going to take, and then budget enough time so that if you have 2 days to do it, and you figure out after 1 day that the new one is not working, you have enough time to go back to the old one so that at least you can resume business the way it was, and you don't have to just shut down things unnecessarily if the supposed leap forward fails. And this is very common, especially in IT, that the new system turns out to be a disaster. It requires something else you don't have, and you are unable to move to the new system as quickly as you plan to. So change control is required for IT SEC classifications of B2, B3, and A1. This is the Department of Defense Orange Book. It applies to military systems, and we'll be talking a lot more about it as we go ahead. There are various levels of security here, and A is the highest. So you cannot get the highest rate here without a change control and management system in place. And so here's your change control process. You have some kind of monitored and orderly way to make the change. You have a formalized testing process to make sure that it works. And you have a rollback plan and a rollback deadline, where if it isn't working by a certain time, you abandon it and instead go back to the previous system. You inform users that there's going to be a change, especially your help desk people. And then you analyze the change to see what's working about it and what isn't working about it. And this is all reviewed and approved by your change approval board. Another big issue is your data classification. Not all your data needs the same level of protection. Some of your data is not sensitive and can be just thrown in ordinary trash cans without being shredded. Other data is very important, like your confidential business plans and patented information and the private information of your employees. So you have to first classify data into levels of security and then implement controls based on the classification of the data. So you got various people here. You got to identify a custodian. There's a typo that should be identified. Then you have criteria that will determine what labels the data get. Then you label everything and document exceptions. And then you have security controls. And then you have to have some way to declassify data when it is no longer important. And then you have to have training. So all your employees understand that documents with the red mark must only be thrown in the red trash can and so on, or you're not going to be successful. So in the military and the government, they use top secret, confidential, and unclassified. In the private sector, they typically use words like confidential, sensitive, or public, and it is less uniform, of course. Each business can choose their own labeling system. So there's a senior manager who is ultimately responsible for the whole security of the organization in very general terms. So they will have a security policy, like something like Facebook will have a policy that the privacy of our users is protected. And that's the manager's responsible for that. Then they will hand this off to a security professional that writes the policy and implements it to achieve the goals specified from senior management. And then you will have data owners. So if you have a database full of usernames and credit card numbers and passwords, there will be somebody who is the owner of that database, and they are the one that is who is obligated to control what happens to that information. And underneath the data owner, there will be a data custodian who performs the actual work as specified by the owner, doing things like making backups, labeling things, appropriately storing them, and so on. Then you have users on your system who are just trying to get their job done, and they have to access this data in accordance with the restrictions placed in by these other people. And then you have an auditor that goes and measures what's really happened here and produces compliance and effectiveness reports. So you know how effective are your controls, are we really obeying the rules, are our policies actually resulting in the limitations that we want. And there are some formal frameworks to do this. COBIT is one of them from ISACA. And this is one that just tries to cover the enterprise end to end and make a framework to help you organize your policies. There are others, but COBIT is a popular one, and it has training just in this product and a series of steps they want you to go through for management and governance. All right, I've got a few cahoots about that. And I think, yeah, probably take a little break after this. I think this will fit nicely in an hour and a half, but a little bit of a break in the middle is good. So one more Kahoot. This is the third one, which is this one. Okay. All right. 9651. First four-digit number I've ever seen on Kahoot. All right, 6 people coming in quickly. I'll wait 10 seconds to see if we're going to get any more, but I'm thinking 6 might be the number. Apparently so. Okay, 4 questions here. Which one of these is useful for a year? All right, that's tactics. Strategy is the big plan. Tactics is the one in the middle. All right. Who is ultimately responsible for the security of the organization? That's the manager. Right now, we're going to see how this holds up. I know the Equifax, they tried to just say it was one IT person, and they fired him, and he's responsible for it all. And I don't know if that's going to fly, because usually the manager is responsible, even if he can point at somebody else. Anyway, we'll see. So who makes the backups? All right, that's the data custodian that does the actual work. They don't make decisions, they just obey the rules they get from the data owner. All right, and who produces compliance reports? All right, that's your auditor. Good, everybody knows that. Let's see who won. DC is winning. All right, I think let's take a 10-minute break. It's just 10 minutes to 7. I'll stop the share and start another one in 10 minutes. That'll make it easier for people to review the video and help people stay awake. Then we'll finish up this chapter. I'm going to stop it.